Composing Gloves here, and this is the 9th video in the DSP Basics series, and we're going to talk about dithering. And dithering is a cool concept, one that I don't think is very well understood among producers. Well, most producers don't understand most of these concepts, so I'm seeking to sort of rectify that. But let's say you've probably seen, if you go to File, Export, and you go to MP3 or whatever, and you want to save your thing, you've probably seen that dithering is an option here. And you might be going, and now you should know what anti-alias is, anti-aliasing, and a few of these other things from previous videos. But you want to know what dithering is now. Does it make a difference? How big of a difference? Well, what dithering does is I'm going to rely on our previous knowledge now of quantization and bit depth. So I'm assuming you've watched those. So we know that our bit depth it guesses our, well, it doesn't guess, it records our volume. It's a lot easier to do that though, because remember, there's a thing called error, and there's all sorts of error corrections, because all these bits are represented as data points, and this could be like 0.0100011101 in binary or whatever, and that's this particular level, right? But what happens is that gets a lot harder for the computer to do, especially when you're converting from analog to digital. If your signal is very soft. If it's a very soft signal, it's going to have to use much smaller values, and it's going to have a harder time getting those values right. And so what you do is you introduce what's called a noise floor. And so dithering is essentially it introduces noise into your signal. Now you might be saying, no, it's silent when it's silent. Well, this noise is outrageously soft. It's like negative 50 decibels or something down. It's like really soft. Like you wouldn't be able to hear it, but it helps the computer to figure out those points. Because when you get down to it, it's like 0.00001000000. It's like just super soft, right? So let's say we've got a kick like we love, and we have it going to, we've got a kick. We have it going to mixture track 5, and we have a bunch of reverb on it because we're making an impact sound. And maybe we're making a sample pack for someone, and we want them to be able to hear our awesome sample. And we have our decay turned way up, so it's a really long sound. And it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And eventually it's going to get soft. Well, when you render that out, you might say, wow, that's really high resolution if you use dithering, or not. Because as those values get softer and softer and softer, your bit depth is struggling to figure out how loud that actual value is. So you might hear it generally getting softer, but it's not like, it could be higher quality, you know what I'm saying? And that's because what dithering does is it introduces that random noise, and that random noise allows it to figure out more exactly, let me go to where did I put that other Edison? More exactly where these points lie. How close to this value do they lie? Because when you think about it, something like this, you have a 0-point line, and these are all moving around this line. We talked about this with center, oh my gosh, I forgot what it was called. DC offset. We talked about this with DC offset and how it moves around this. Well, that mean is a lot harder to find when your values are a lot smaller, because it's having trouble just figuring out what the values are themselves. And so as a result, you don't get as accurate a signal. So when your signal is loud, dithering, doesn't bother all that much, but when it gets soft, that's when dithering counts. So if you have a really loud track, you might not hear a huge difference, versus if you have like a softer track, it might matter, especially if you're recording samples out like this. That could really matter. So just so you know, that's what dithering is. That's what it's for. That's why I'd use it. It's really important when you're dealing with volumes like this. If you're making the next big banger EDM track, chances are dithering is not going to matter too much, but it could add a lot of higher end stuff to your reverb, because you got to think about it. Each track is being rendered out, right? And you're putting it onto the master, and some of these sounds could be pretty soft. So it could play a role in the overall, make your track sound better overall. But it's one of those things that, it's up to you. I always leave it on just because it takes a little longer to render. But just so you know, digital music does have noise in it. In analog days, there used to be a lot more noise. It used to be way more noticeable. You'd hear, it was tape hiss and things like that. But now we actually introduce it on purpose to help with quantization and bit depth and things like that. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. And have a blessed day.